The blob ate the neighbor's house. Elias gawked at the thing from his kitchen window. For 15 minutes, he scanned for any trace of Retha's home. No part of the house poked through the writhing mass, not the gray shingles from the pitched roof, the dormer windows, the off-white siding, or the wooden steps leading to the front door. The compulsion to go outside overpowered his caution. He found himself twisting the knob of his front door before he consciously made the decision to leave the safety of his home. The stench of burning tires, ammonia, and copper hit him the moment he opened the door. Though faint, the scent was impossible to ignore. He shut the door behind him, not wanting the smell to pollute the inside of his home. Stepping out onto the walkway with no small measure of hesitation, he turned left and balked at the undeniable presence of the thing. An iridescent sheen covered the surface of the viscous tar-like mass. Gelatinous bubbles dribbled and popped out of the innumerable yawning pores. The air shimmered around it, like heat waves off of scalding asphalt. The blob undulated in place where Retha's house once stood. Elias thought about his options as he stared in mute revulsion at a protrusion that might have once been the chimney. Air purifiers were expensive, so he had to settle with keeping the windows closed to block out the smell. The shutters let in a healthy amount of sunlight when closed, which allowed him to shut the blinds on the blob without the west side of the house being in complete darkness. Retha's home sat 2 houses away from the end of the cul-de-sac. He had no business traveling to that dead end, much less stare in its direction whenever he went outside. "What are you looking at?" his mother called from the front of his house. She leaned against the door, arms crossed. Graying hair framed the confused expression on her face. "Close the door, Mama," he said. "You're going to let the stink in." His mother did not close the door. She stepped off the front porch and looked left. "Cute," she said. Confused, Elias scanned his surroundings. Birds flew around the house-sized blob. Squirrels scampered up trees on the opposite side of the street. His other neighbors, who did not have their houses eaten, tilted their heads away from the blob as they entered their cars. He saw nothing that could have prompted an affectionate response from his mother. "What's cute?" he asked. She pointed at the blob. "It looks like a huge puffball," she said. "That's adorable." Elias balked. "No, that thing is not adorable." "What?" "It would be a lovely pet if it wasn't so big," she said. "I always wanted a pet." "It ate Retha's house," he said. "It's fine," she said. "Come inside before your breakfast gets cold." She entered the house without sparing another look at the blob. She did not close the door behind her. Breakfast. The day was new and Elias had to get ready for work. Where did Retha work? Her job paid well enough for the woman to live on her own, but he never figured out what that job entailed. What time did she start? Had she been inside when the blob consumed her house? Was she still alive in there? Did Elias escape the neighborhood? A sound like a growling stomach caused ripples to spread across the blob's gummy surface. He turned away with a grimace. Retha must be alive. She was at work, ignorant of what happened to her home and unaware of the nasty surprise waiting for her at the end of her shift. Leaving the neighborhood was an extreme response. He resented the prospect of living next to the blob, but he could tolerate it in the periphery of his life. If it did not invade his personal space, acclimating to the uncomfortable aura radiating off its rancid skin would not be impossible. The blob ate half the garden. Their backyard had no chance of winning awards, but it was a hobbyist's dream. Green grass, healthy tulips and roses, a stone footpath, a medium-sized fountain, and a wooden gazebo made it a great place to relax in nice weather. Though Elias removed weeds and trimmed dying leaves on occasion, his mother lovingly tended to the garden like a second child. The backyard gave her an endless source of pride. The blob tainted the left side of the garden beyond repair. It erased everything under its opaque form. Even objects not touching the rank mass became malformed. Grass yellowed and shriveled like dead spiders, stems sagged, withered petals fell to the ground, stone crumbled into dust, the fountain spewed dark water, and rot clung to the base of the gazebo. His mother continued gardening, unbothered by the corruption. The right side of the backyard got the same attention and care she had given it countless times before. Every day, millimeters at a time, the blob consumed years of hard work. She did not mourn the slow destruction, nor did she try to halt its ravenous path. "Mama, you shouldn't be out here." A cloth over Elias's mouth and nose muffled his voice. A headache formed in the front of his skull whenever he moved the cloth away from his face for more than a minute. The stench of burnt rubber, ammonia, and copper made his eyes water and irritated the walls of his throat. The back porch had yet to be touched by the blob, but he hugged the right side of the platform as he watched his mother work. A roach-infested apartment or the basement of a stranger was all he could afford, but living with pests or strangers was preferable to the encroaching horror that continuously oozed from where Retha's house used to be. His mother had no desire to leave, but he was not opposed to living on his own. He needed to escape the neighborhood. "Mama!" Elias tried again. He leaned over the railing. His mother scooped up the ruined half of the stone path with a hand broom and dustpan. Her fingers brushed dangerously close to the blob. Elias pulled the cloth away from his face. "Mom, don't—" A coughing fit interrupted his warning. He clutched the railing for support as he attempted to expel the rancid air out of his lungs. With every sharp inhale he took between coughs, more foulness polluted his insides. He made a hasty retreat into the house. His mother refused to keep the windows closed. "We need to let the heat out," she kept saying, like the devil's defecation was not outside their walls. However, in spite of the blob's miasma permeating throughout the interior of the house, clean air flowing from the east kept the awful stench from overpowering their home. Once he caught his breath, he returned to the porch. The taste of foreign blood and stale urine rested on the tip of his tongue. Keeping the cloth over his nose, he spat into the garden. "Please don't spit on the flower bed," his mother said, not looking up from her work. "You're too close to that thing," Elias said. "Move back." Why?" she asked. Astonishment kept him from speaking again. The blob was clearly dangerous. Even if it were safe to be around, its horrid smell repelled anything with a nose. He struggled understanding how she tolerated being close to it. "Don't mind him," his mother said to the blob. "He's just being dramatic." Perhaps he was overreacting. If it was as dangerous as he thought, then surely she would react to the blob's presence with the gravity it deserved. His peace of mind would be restored if he moved somewhere far away, but did he want to live in a run-down apartment with roaches? Did he want to rent a basement with little to no light from the outside? What if his landlord was a thief or a serial killer? Perhaps the blob had no desire to eat their home. He could afford an air purifier if he saved up for it. Locking himself inside his room until he found somewhere nice to live, while not ideal, might be better for him in the long run. If it kills you, it will be your fault. This thought, alongside the realization that he had not seen Retha in weeks, chilled him. Elias bucked off his unease with a shake of his head. He sighed. "Please don't touch it." "It's fine," his mother said. "Can you bring me another garbage bag? All the ones I brought outside are full." The blob ate the living room and kitchen. When Elias first noticed the gluttonous creature bleed through the back door, a part of him was surprised at the alarm he felt. He was taken aback by his own discomfort at seeing the mass slink across the cold floor tiles of the kitchen and the shag carpet of the living room. To the part of his brain accustomed to and numbed by the presence of the thing, getting agitated felt like a waste of time and energy. Unfortunately, the defiled space and increased loss of control was not his only source of distress. The blob smell intensified. If someone urinated up his nostrils, the stream would fail to produce a stronger ammonia smell. Accompanied by an assault of scorched polymer and steaming blood, the fetid mixture was unlike anything he ever had the misfortune of experiencing. Air flowing through the east-facing windows no longer diluted the stench. Face masks did nothing to filter it out. Air purifiers were powerless against the foul might of the blob. Breathing through his nose for too long gave him migraines that felt like rusty sewing pins scraping the inside of his skull. Breathing through his mouth made his stomach acid bubble against the surrounding organ. Rotating between his nose and mouth felt like voluntary torture. but his airways could only take so much abuse before they needed rest. His mother also suffered from the effects of the blob's invasion. Her eyes were perpetually bloodshot. She developed a rash on her cheeks, neck, and shoulders. Clumps of hair fell from her scalp. Yet her nonchalance towards the blob remained unchanged. She blamed her red eyes on an infection, put on makeup to cover the rash, wore hats to hide the balding, and continued standing far too close to the toxic monster in their house. "Why do you lock yourself in your room all the time?" his mother asked. "I don't like it when you bring your food into your room. I want to talk to you during dinner." Elias had been halfway up the stairs when the interrogation stopped him mid-stride. He turned on weak legs to look down at his mother on the ground floor. The bottom of the stairway, a slim path in the living room that led to the foyer, and the front door were the only untouched areas on that level. He opened his mouth to speak, then doubled over in another coughing fit. He slapped a hand against the wall to keep himself from falling. His palms sank through the rotting wallpaper. The blob took over the kitchen a week ago. Elias refused to risk eating anything from the house long before the sticky growth crept its way over the tiled floor and devoured their fridge. His mother continued making food for herself until she was incapable of entering the room. Now either she or Elias had to buy takeout. His mother preferred to eat while sitting on the stairs. He refused to do the same. "Well?" His mother's impatient tone had little effect on Elias as he tried to recover from the fit, though he wished she stopped looking at him like he was ignoring her. "Why don't you eat with me anymore?" "The blob," he rasped. His mother rolled her eyes. "I don't know what your problem is. There's nothing wrong with it," she said. "If you hate it so much, you don't have to live here." Elias had a few family members he could stay with for a while, but none of them were good options. His mostly absent father promised to help him move to his own place, but he did not want to be a financial burden on a man he saw once every few months. His cousins still lived with their parents. His aunts and uncles were not in a position to handle another occupant in their house. Grandparents from his mother's side would not reject their grandson, but they still took issue with him being born out of wedlock. Grandparents from his father's side lived in a different country. Aside from the long distance, his fear of flying made that option a last resort. "I'm tired, Mom," he said. "I'm going to sleep." His bedroom was his only sanctuary. Though the room offered no freedom from the smell, his bed was positioned in the farthest point from the ever-growing creature. He did not feel its presence or hear the growling noises from there. When he closed his eyes while under the covers, he pretended to live in a world where the blob never invaded his home. "Fine! Fine. Get some rest." His mother's voice lacked empathy. "Maybe you'll eat with me tomorrow." Elias tried to reply. Another cough smothered his words. He gave his mother a weak thumbs up instead. Not waiting for her to react, he stumbled away. His shadow casted over framed photographs on the wall. Swimming at the beach. Blowing out birthday candles. A boy that used to be happy. A woman that once possessed maternal instincts. Snapshots of less miserable times. Time. The blob did not eat Elias's bedroom. He and his mother no longer lived in a house with a parasite. The all-encompassing mass turned their home into a sinking ship, and they were rats scrambling for dry purchase. The grace of God allowed them to find continuous refuge in his untainted bedroom. For now. No melting tires, no urine, no blood. No scents pervaded the yet-to-be-consumed room. In the absence of smell, a burn akin to scalding razor blades drove into his nostrils, throat, and lungs. It hurt to think about breathing. Inhaling any amount of oxygen was agonizing. A rope ladder allowed him to leave through the window. All other exits were consumed by the blob. When outside, every breath came without the promise of pain. He had enough energy to move around. He could not claim to be happy out there, and he felt like a freak whenever his surviving neighbors refused to look at him, but his stress lessened when he stayed outdoors. All of his energy drained out of his body once he returned home. It was a miracle he had the strength to crawl into bed. Once prone, he stayed cocooned in his sheets until he needed to use the bathroom. When they still had a bathroom to use. 5 minutes passed since his mother informed him that they no longer had access to a toilet or shower. A week or two prior, the rashes on her skin turned into boils that defied being concealed by makeup. Her irises were dark pits sitting on pools of red. She was bald under her hat. Still, no longer had access, or some variation of the phrase, was how she continued to describe the slow consumption of their home, as if the house itself were at fault for their decreased living space.
I don't understand why you never tried to make this work.
His mother had a chain smoker's rasp. She coughed several times before continuing.
If you opened your heart to it, you'd see that it has a good soul. Why can't you just be nicer to it?
Elias tilted his head away from the pillow. He looked for a hint of sarcasm or amusement on her face, desperate for a sign that she did not mean what she said. Surely, after everything that happened to them, she realized the thing was harmful. Her expression lacked humor or clarity of mind. No regret or love swam in her eyes. She radiated disappointment in a son who refused to pretend that everything was okay.
The blob is evil, Diana,
he said, lowering his head. The heat of her scowl made his skin crawl.
You know what? I hope your children end up exactly like you,
she cursed. With that, she opened the window and climbed down the ladder. Elias listened to the wet smack of the rope hitting the blob just under his window frame. One day, it was going to eat the ladder. If he wanted to save himself, he needed to leave soon. But if he left and his extended family refused to take him in, he would be homeless. Was homelessness his only option? Was it not better to be homeless and alive than to die in his room? Nothing stopped him from leaving and never coming back. So why did he keep returning to the dissolving house? Why was a familiar death trap more comforting than unfamiliar safety? If it kills you, it will be your fault. Elias was not the most important person in the world. Most days, he did not feel like the main character in his own life. If he died, the universe would not celebrate or mourn his passing. If he died. Death was for other people whose perspectives he would never experience. He was no main character, but how could the credits roll on him? How could the curtains fall, the lights go out, the TV switch off? How could he die when being alive was all he had ever known? Things were not fine, but his luck had to change at some point in the future. Maybe. He hoped. Until then, he waited for someone or something to save him. Elias ignored the gnawing at his bedroom door and draped a blanket over his head.
Superpower pill. Pills that give you superpowers, DM. Each one will give you abilities that will set you apart from the average folk. While they are pricey, you only need to take one to have powers for life. I do have to warn you that all of these pills have side effects, but they're a small price to pay to be special. Also, these are not all the pills in my collection. If you decide to do business with me, I can show you more in the future. For now, here are your 4 options.